You have big dreams of losing weight and creating a healthy, joyful life. But you find yourself craving sugar, caught up in what the scale says, and diet hopping. Dieting is the old way of losing weight. And the good news is I'm going to give you a new way of eating so you can ditch diets for good and build a healthy relationship with real food. My name is Megan Olson, certified nutrition practitioner, creator of Skinny Fitalicious, and your host of the Dish on Diets show. Hello, today I'm talking to you about a phrase I hear more than any other phrase from women that I coach, and it's this: I should have this figured out by now. It doesn't matter whether you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or even in your 70s or beyond. I hear this phrase over and over and over again. And every time I hear it, I think the same thing. Why should you? What makes you think that? Recently, I was talking with a woman during a consultation, and she said that exact phrase to me. It immediately reminded me of when I studied abroad in Spain during college. Before I moved there, I took 4 years of Spanish in high school, another 2 years in college. I knew the vocabulary, I could read Spanish, I understood the grammar, and then I got to Spain. And I remember standing in my host mom's kitchen on the very first day while she, spoke rapidly in Spanish, and I barely understood a word she was saying. Now, imagine if I stood there thinking, I should have this figured out. I should already be fluent. That wouldn't make any sense. Knowing about a language isn't the same thing as being able to speak the language. Reading Spanish and having a conversation in Spanish are two completely different skill sets. That's exactly why I was there, to build the skill of communicating in a real world setting. I see women approach weight loss kind of in the same way. You're trying to have a fluent conversation in Spanish before you've really learned how to speak the language and mastered the basics. Many women have spent years dieting, counting calories, weighing food, or following meal plans. Those experiences have taught you how to restrict food, but they didn't necessarily teach you the skills required to build a healthy body that you can maintain for the rest of your life. Those skills include understanding how to build balanced meals, eating enough protein and fiber, managing your hunger, regulating yourself around fun foods instead of fearing them and just restricting them, coping with stress without using food, strength training skills, setting boundaries, creating new routines that actually fit into your personal life. Those are learned skills. And like any skill, they take practice and time and repetition to get good at them. And the reason so many women feel stuck isn't because they're incapable. It's because they're expecting themselves to perform at an expert level they haven't learned yet. That's where the word should becomes so damaging. Every time you tell yourself, I should have this figured out, I should be farther along, you're arguing with reality. Instead, I want you to practice replacing the word should with the word want. I want to have this figured out. Can you tell the difference? Should creates shame. Want clarifies the goal. When you say, I want to have this figured out, you're acknowledging that this matters to you. You're admitting you're frustrated because you care. Because once you admit you want something, the next question isn't, what's wrong with me? The next question becomes, am I willing to practice and learn the skills required to get there? That is a completely different conversation. Instead of judging yourself for not already knowing how, you become somebody now who's willing to learn. And learning, not perfection, is what it actually takes to create lasting change. Here's another way to know that this is true. I have absolutely zero emotions around the idea that I should own a cat. And nobody take offense to this, okay? But I don't sit around thinking I should really get a cat. And if somebody told me I should have one, I wouldn't feel guilty or ashamed. Why? Because I don't care. I don't really want a cat. I'm totally indifferent to it. The things we say we should do are usually things we care about and that we actually do want for ourselves. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I should be further along, I should have this figured out, I want you to replace that word. Instead of saying, I should, I want you to say, I want to have this figured out. Can you feel how different that sounds when you say, I want to lose weight, I want to feel confident in my clothes, I want peace with food, I want to stop hiding in pictures, I want to walk up a flight of stairs without feeling out of breath, I want to become somebody who just naturally walks every day? Notice you're no longer judging yourself. You're simply acknowledging that this thing is something you want and that it matters to you. And once you admit what you want, now the next question becomes, am I willing to do what I need to do, what's required to get good at that? That's much more of a useful question than beating yourself up over where you are today. I should be farther along. Because the thing is wanting something doesn't magically make it happen. It requires building the skills, habits, systems, mindsets that support the outcome you're after. I think this is where some women get stuck. You've convinced yourself that because you've struggled before, it must not be possible for you. Your brain starts telling you wild stories to protect you from more disappointment. I've tried everything. Maybe this just isn't meant for me. I should probably just stay where I am. This is probably just how I am. Those thoughts are not facts. They're your brain trying to protect you from the pain of failing again. But here's the problem. Every time you tell yourself it's impossible, you're still admitting you want something different. Otherwise, you wouldn't be frustrated in the first place. Your frustration isn't proof that you're failing. It's proof that you actually care. And that's why I believe every should is really a want in disguise. And once you recognize what you want, you realize you have a choice. Will you keep looking for another quick fix diet? Or will you choose to build the habits that create lasting change? Because that's the part diets don't teach you. Diets teach you just how to restrict. They don't teach you how to live and maintain good habits. So let me give you a real example from one of my coaching calls. I was talking with a client about why she was overeating later in the day. And as we talked it through, we realized there was a pattern. On the mornings when she had appointments, she'd skip breakfast because she didn't know what to grab on the go. By the afternoon, she was starving and eating far more than she intended to. So I asked her a simple question. Can you give me a list of protein foods you could maybe try to quickly grab on those mornings and see how it goes? And she paused, she thought, and she was like, I can't think of any. Now, this is somebody who has done multiple diets over the many years of her life. She's counted the calories. She's followed strict meal plans. She's even completed a doctor supervised, weight loss program where she was only, allowed to eat a protein and a vegetable, not even fruit. I mean, she has spent years, if not decades, dieting, but no one has ever taught my client the skill of how to solve a real life problem. Like, what are my practical protein solutions when I'm running out the door? That's a skill you build and learn. So together we brainstormed a list. And after we did that, she said, but why didn't I think of that? That's so simple. And I told her, because you haven't built the skill of thinking this way yet. Not because you're lazy, not because you're undisciplined, not because you're incapable or there's something wrong with you. It's because no one's ever taught you the skill. In fact, this is exactly why I'm hosting my snack hack challenge over on Substack next month. So many women think their snacking is a discipline problem, but most of the time it's actually a skills problem. During the 4 weeks of the Snack Hack Challenge, we're going to work on things like building satisfying meals with enough protein and fiber, understanding why you're hungry, creating habits that naturally reduce mindless snacking. It's not going to be another diet or quick fix or challenge built around willpower. It's about building skills you can use long after the challenge is over. So I'll put the link to that challenge in the description if you're interested in joining us. But that's what diets miss. Diets teach you eat these foods or follow these rules or restrict and eat this many calories, but they rarely teach you how to think through the everyday situations you'll face for the rest of your life. And when my client realized that I could sense the relief in her voice that she wasn't broken. She wasn't failing. She was simply missing a skill set that she is going to have to practice, like using her smart brain to, figure out how to navigate real life situations. And those are learned skills. Those are things she is capable of learning. That's why I believe one of the most like humbling things you can do, honestly, is ask for help. Not because you're incapable, not because you're not smart, because learning from somebody else who's already developed those skills, who's an expert in this area, is often the fastest path forward. I work with so many women who are incredibly successful. They're executives, business owners, nurses, teachers, mothers, women who, solve problems every single day of their lives. But when it comes to their health, they're frustrated because they're trying to apply the same approach that made them successful everywhere else. Go all in, push harder, be more disciplined, expect perfection. That mindset might help you climb the career ladder. It doesn't work very well, though, with nutrition and exercise. Health isn't built through perfection. It's built through repetition. It's built by practicing skills over and over and over and over again for a very long time until they become your automatic. That's why the all or nothing approach keeps many women stuck, because you follow the same path that you followed with your career and building your financial, well-being. You try to apply that over here with nutrition and exercise and weight loss, and it just crumbles apart, right? You try to be perfect for a few weeks, and then life happens and you miss a workout, you eat off plan, you get busy, you stop tracking, and instead of adjusting, you just decide you failed. I'm a big fat failure. And then you start over on Monday, or be like, oh, I'll just kick the can down the road. I'll start over in November. I mean, and then the cycle repeats. And on top of all of that, you're telling yourself, I should already know how to do this. I should already be where I, think I should be. I should have already lost the weight and learned how to maintain it. I mean, it's no wonder you feel defeated, because you're trying to solve a skills problem with restriction. You know, a calorie number, a protein number, meal plans, detoxes, 30-day challenges, a named diet, meal replacements. They're all trying to give you an answer of like how to eat instead of teaching you how to create a way of living. That's the wrong tool for the job. The real work isn't finding a diet plan or finding a calorie number or a protein number. The real work is developing skills, habits, routines, the mindsets that allow you to navigate your real life. Not perfectly, but allow you to navigate with flexibility with your habits. And that's how you stop the cycle of losing weight, gaining weight, and wondering what's wrong with you, because there was never anything wrong with you to begin with. You just need to learn a different set of skills that diets don't teach you. One thing I've noticed about many of the women that I work with is that they are incredibly successful in so many areas of their lives. They're leaders, they're professionals, they're business owners, they're raising families. They've proven to themselves over and over again that they can accomplish hard things. But then they look at their health and think, why can't I figure this out? What's wrong with me? And I think part of the reason is that the approach that help you succeed in your career, it doesn't translate to nutrition and exercise. At work, going all in, it's often rewarded, right? Like your performance review, you get rewarded for that. Working longer hours, pushing harder, holding yourself to these incredibly high standards. That mindset can absolutely help you build a successful career, but health doesn't reward perfection. It rewards consistency. Those are two very different things. That's why I tell my clients that one of the hardest things about losing weight isn't actually changing your food. It's becoming willing to be a beginner, taking insultingly small steps. Think about tracking your food. I hear people say all the time, tracking is so hard. Of course it is. It's a new skill. Or somebody decides that they're going to walk 10,000 steps every day. They do it for 3 weeks. Life gets busy. They miss a day and suddenly they convinced they failed. They weren't failing. They skipped the part where they actually have to build the habits and take the insultingly small step. So like, for instance, when I started my own 80-pound weight loss journey, I didn't begin with 10,000 steps. I didn't go like, I'm on my weight loss journey. Here we go. 10,000 steps a day. I started with a 10-minute walk every day. That's it. And I honestly, it felt too small. But those insultingly small steps are exactly what built the habit over time. Most women are so focused on the end goal. I want to be at 10,000 steps, that they completely overlook the process required to get there. They want the 10,000 step habit without first becoming the person who just goes for a 10-minute walk. Why? Because our ego hates being a beginner. It hates looking inexperienced. It hates doing something that feels small or unimpressive. So instead, we tell ourselves these defeating stories. I'm too busy. Work is too crazy right now. I'll just start when life settles down. And sometimes those challenges are very real, but sometimes those stories are protecting us from something else, the discomfort of starting small, taking the insultingly small step, and the possibility that we might fail. The irony is that while we're protecting our ego, we're also protecting ourselves from making progress. And the ego gets to stay comfortable, but we stay stuck and frustrated. This is why learning matters so much. And shifting your mind around this goal of losing weight and keeping it off and understanding it's about building skills, not just going on a diet or following a protein or calorie number. There's a difference between, learning a skill and dieting. There's a difference between understanding concepts and having skills. Knowing you should eat protein at breakfast, that's knowledge. Actually looking in your refrigerator, choosing a protein source, preparing it consistently, and doing it without thinking is a skill you build. And skills are built through repetition and time, not through willpower, not through reading another article, not through finding the perfect calorie target, not through listening to a podcast or a 3-minute reel on social media or listening to a YouTube video. Skills are built through practice. That's why I get so concerned when somebody tells me I just need more discipline, because discipline isn't actually what's missing. If forcing yourself to follow a plan actually worked, you'd already have the results you wanted. Most women listening to this podcast have already proven they can white knuckle through through a diet for a few weeks. The problem isn't getting yourself under control. The problem is that control doesn't create lasting change. Control doesn't change your life. Learning does. Skills do. Every time you forced yourself through another diet plan only to regain the weight later on, it probably felt like evidence that something was wrong with you. But what if it wasn't? What if it was simply evidence that you were trying to force an outcome without first building the skills that made that outcome sustainable? That's why I believe meeting yourself where you are isn't settling for less. It's smart. Smart people don't pretend they're experts. They accept where they are, learn one skill at a time, and trust that competence comes from practice, time, and repetition. That's exactly what I did in my own journey. I didn't know I was doing it that way. I just knew I had to start somewhere, right? I had to get okay with taking that 10-minute walk for many, many months while everyone else, was focusing on the 10,000 steps. I had to get okay with being a beginner, with taking the insultingly small step, because beginners eventually do become experts, but only if they're willing to be beginners long enough to learn and build the skills and get good at the skills. The biggest problem I see isn't that women aren't trying hard enough. It's that they have skill gaps. Most of the women I coach have never had a human being sit down with them, look at their actual life, and teach them how to apply nutrition and exercise in a way that fits their reality. And that's really important because every single person's life is different. One client might be schooling 5 kids. Another might be a critical nurse working 12-hour shifts. Another might travel every other week for work. They're all learning the same foundational skills, but they're going to apply those skills very differently. Imagine if I looked at the nurse working a 12-hour shift and said, you just need more discipline, lift weights every day and get 10,000 steps no matter what. That would be ridiculous. The question isn't whether walking is good for you. The question is, how do we make walking work in your real life? That's where coaching becomes so valuable, not because I'm giving people magical potions they couldn't Google. It's because we're taking principles and figuring out how they apply and fit into the reality of someone's life. Because if your plan doesn't fit into your life, it won't fit for very long. And part of the coaching relationship, right, is figuring that out and both people communicating, right? And that takes the client also communicating like, hey, I don't feel like this is working. Can you help me figure out something else? And that's why, the other thing that I really challenge people is when they tell me that a diet worked. This is probably like the most painful thing I hear from women on consultations and in my messages on social media. Someone will say, Optavia worked, or Weight Watchers worked, or keto worked. Like, I had so much success with Weight Watchers. I had so much success with Optavia. And I'll ask them, well, what do you mean it worked? And usually they just say, I lost weight, right? It worked. I lost weight. If somebody built a business that made $500,000 in 1 year, but then they lost everything because they never learned how to manage the money, would you call that a successful business? Of course not. Making money isn't the whole story, right? Keeping it is. And weight loss is no different. Losing the weight is only part of the story. Keeping it off is the measure of whether the approach was applied to your real life and the skills that you built, right? So when you say it worked, it's like, no, it didn't. It didn't work. It didn't work. You went on a diet, you lost weight, but you have to keep it off. That's when it works, right? And I think one of the biggest fears that women have is, even if I lose the weight, how am I going to keep it off? And if all you've done is force yourself to follow another calorie target or meal plan or hit a protein goal without changing your habits, your routines, your mindset, or building your skills, then that's a valid concern that you should be scared about, because nothing about you has changed. You just went on a diet. But when you actually build skills, you don't lose them. Think about riding a bike. Once you learn, that learning becomes just a natural part of you. You don't forget it, right? You might be a little rusty after not riding a bike for a while, but once you get on, right, you start to remember and you start to do it and it clicks, right? The same thing happens with nutrition and exercise. I have clients who, used to dread walking. Now they tell me they actually look forward to walking and feel strange when they don't go. I have clients who, once thought that tracking their food was exhausting and so hard. And, a few months later, they'll tell me, I don't even think about it anymore. It's just what I do. That's what skill development looks like. At first, it feels awkward and clunky and hard, and then it becomes familiar with time, practice, and repetition. Eventually, it just becomes part of what you do. It becomes part of your identity. That's why I tell my clients from day one, you are learning new skills, because if I didn't, they would assume the struggle that they're feeling, the frustrations and the hardness, meant they weren't capable. They tell themselves, maybe this just isn't for me. This is not something I can do. But that's not what's actually happening. They weren't failing, they were learning. And those are two very different things. The truth is, crash diets aren't failures because you failed them. They're failures because they never taught you the skills you needed to make the adjustments in your normal life. The life that causes the weight gain, right? That doesn't mean you wasted your time on any of those diets, because those diets were experiences that taught you something. Maybe what those diets taught you is that, quick fixes don't fix anything. And that's valuable information. Now, you get to make a choice. Instead of asking, what's the fastest way to lose weight? You can start asking, what's the best way to become the kind of person who can keep weight I lose off? Because that's a completely different kind of journey. Personally, I believe life has a funny way of kind of putting the same lesson in front of us until we finally learn from it. And that's why so many women feel like they're running into the same wall over and over and over again. It's not because you're incapable. It's because there's something you haven't learned yet. And I don't mean that to come across in a judgmental way. I actually think that's incredibly hopeful and empowering, because of the problem is that you're missing skills, not that you're missing willpower, discipline, or worthiness. Then the solution becomes learning and accepting that you have to be a beginner. That's something every single one of you listening to this podcast is capable of. So you have a choice. You can tell yourself and look at all your past attempts and say, I should have this all figured out by now. I'll probably never get there. You could say that, or you could say, maybe I haven't learned the skills yet. Those two thoughts lead to completely different futures. One keeps you stuck, the other one keeps you curious. One creates shame, the other creates hope. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this episode today, it's that you have to stop saying, I should have this figured out. And you need to start saying, I want to figure this out. So what skills do I need to learn? Because that's the question that moves you forward. You don't need to become an entirely different person. You don't need more guilt. You don't need more shame. You don't need a calorie number or a protein number. You don't need another named diet. You need the willingness to be a beginner, to practice, to keep learning, to do the insultingly small step, because that's how lasting change happens. You can't just go on a diet and not make any adjustments and work on the skills that are going to help you keep it off. You have to be working on both. You have to lose weight and you have to make those adjustments and build those skills at the same time. You're capable of doing that. And I really wish somebody would have told me that when I was 215 pounds. So that's why I'm telling you. So if you've been listening today and you're exhausted by constantly thinking about your weight and food and avoiding pictures and feeling uncomfortable in your clothes or wondering if you're ever going to figure this out, I want you to know something. You don't have to keep trying to solve this alone. Helping women learn these skills and apply them in their real lives, that's what I do. Not by handing you another meal plan or expecting perfection, but by helping you build a way of eating, moving, and thinking that fits your life. And if that sounds like the kind of support you're looking for, there's a link in the description where you can book a consultation, no pressure. We'll simply have a conversation and see if we're a good fit. But if you're not quite ready for one-on-one coaching, I'd love to invite you to my 4-week snack hack challenge over on Substack. It's designed to help you build nutrition skills and hunger, balance meals and snacking so that you can feel more in control around food without relying on another diet. I'll leave that link in the description as well for you to check out. Ladies, thank you so much for listening. And remember, you shouldn't have it all figured out yet. You just have to be willing to learn and practice skills. Okay? Talk to you soon.
Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, you have to come check out my free weight loss class. It's the 5 steps to lasting weight loss, how hormones impact weight loss, and the truth about lasting weight loss without relying on willpower, workouts, or deprivation. Click the link in the show notes to watch that free class today. And if you are a woman over 35 with 20 to 50 or more pounds to lose, schedule a free weight loss breakthrough session with me after you watch that class. And let's talk about your 20 to 50 or more pound weight loss plan.
Hi, I'm Jake Grez, also known as Nurse Jake. As a travel nurse, I've worked in all kinds of places, different settings, cities, and climates. Every assignment brings on a new challenge, which is why I always bring my figs. These scrubs are built for whatever the job throws at you. They're breathable, flexible, and comfortable in any environment. No matter where I land, I know they're going to keep me looking and feeling my best. And don't sleep on the details. The pockets, the features, the finishing touches, everything has a purpose, and it makes a real difference when you're moving nonstop. The fit is clean, tailored, and super polished, and they come in a huge range of colors. In other words, they feel great throughout a 12-hour shift, and they always look good. See every healthcare professional on Instagram. If you work in healthcare or know someone who does, check out Figs and get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.